there, everybody, and welcome to Good Orderly Direction, Practical Tools of the Bible. Today we're discussing Joseph and the 7 habits of highly effective people. So we're taking a little bit of a detour from what we usually talk about with Scripture and looking at Joseph in context of something that is popular in modern day media. Now, if you've read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it is a book that's designed to help you be effective, build abundance, create relationships, and ultimately reduce your anxiety and improve your happiness. The principles of 7 habits, not in this order, but the principles, are begin with the end in mind, which is similar to prudence when we talk about biblical principles. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. In the Bible, we want to understand others. We want to understand God before we try to get them to understand us. Theoretically, God already understands us. Be proactive. And that takes a lot of courage to do things proactively instead of reactively. Put first things first. And in Scripture, we talk about the term earnestness and integrity, doing things as we are expected to do, putting one foot in front of the other and giving it 110%. And that's what I think of with first things first, is putting our word, putting our energies first above our wants, above other things. Synergize is another habit that Covey talks about in the 7 habits. And it's important to think about how synergy represents respect. Instead of feeling threatened by others' talents and others' abilities and others' differences, if we can learn to look at them and embrace them, then it can help us build abundance. If we show respect for them, it doesn't mean we have to agree. It doesn't mean we have to embrace their values. But if we respect them for who they are, we respect their boundaries, likely they will respect ours, and that will help us build abundance. Create win-wins is often an act of selflessness. Instead of saying, I am going to get what I want because I want it at any cost, win-wins is an element of compromise. When we create win-wins, we say, this is what I really want, and this is how it can benefit you. So let's both benefit from whatever is going to happen. And then sharpen the saw. In terms of Joseph, we really didn't see him sharpen the saw a lot. Sharpening the saw is taking time to relax, to rest, rejuvenate, and maybe even taking time to hone your craft and get more skills before you try to implement them. So let's talk about how Joseph embodied some of these. Now remember, in Genesis, Joseph was a very young man, probably 13 or so, we're guessing, when his father made him the coat of many colors. His brothers, especially the sons of Leah, were very jealous of him. When he went out and, let's back up. He had these dreams in which his brothers bowed down to him, in which the stars and the moon and the sun bowed down to him. And his brothers took that to mean that he would rule over them. And if we step back and think, a young child and a young adolescent often doesn't have a good filter. He may have been sharing these dreams he had because he was confused by them or perplexed by them. Maybe it was an indication to Jacob that he was going to be a leader someday. Maybe he was interpreting it himself to mean, I'm going to be a leader one day. He didn't necessarily mean it in offense to his brothers, we can hypothesize. But he had these dreams and he shared them with his brothers. So we can think about this as beginning with the end in mind. Joseph knows in his heart and in his mind, whether it's just because or because God placed it there, however you want to interpret it, that he is going to be a leader in his life. And he tells these dreams to his brothers. Every step he takes throughout the Old Testament, we see him working toward this ultimate goal of being a leader. We see him taking these steps probably very methodically toward being a leader. So he told the dreams to his brothers, and his brothers got jealous and sold him into slavery. Oh, okay. Well, Joseph could have gotten really angry. He could have gotten really depressed. He could have gotten a lot of things. But what did he do? He looked at what was happening and made the best of it. He worked earnestly. He put first things first. Instead of saying, I want to get even, instead of saying, I need to be a leader now, he recognized that that was not his time. He needed to be patient and establish himself as a credible, intelligent, worthy person among the Egyptians. So he recognized this. He was very diligent in everything he did, and he very quickly advanced in Potiphar's household, which again shows that putting first things first and working with integrity, being respectful to others, he sat back, if you think about it, as he was working in Potiphar's household and learned more about the Egyptians, learned more about what the Egyptians needed. He may not have known the whole thing about the grain stores if he hadn't been working for Potiphar. So he seeks first to understand, what is it that my role is in this particular activity, in this particular lifetime? Unfortunately, then again, Joseph was falsely imprisoned. So he was sold into slavery, then he was falsely imprisoned. But did he let it get him down? Well, maybe for a minute. But ultimately, he rose to a position of power, having a lot of control over the other inmates. Yet in that position of power, if you remember from that Bible study, he was compassionate. He treated each individual inmate with the respect that they deserved at that time. Instead of saying, well, you're here, you must have done wrong, so I can treat you badly, he said, I don't know if you're a bad person. I don't know if you made a bad choice. I don't know what happened. But right now, you are being honest. You are being good to me, so I'm going to be good to you. And that was a really important lesson that I think we need to glean. Joseph didn't let down his guard. He didn't just automatically trust everybody, but he treated people with the respect that they were due based on how they were treating him and treating others at that point in time. And that goes a long way in families, in communities, in businesses. Even if somebody has a bad reputation or made mistakes in the past, if you hold them hostage to those, you may likely create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you recognize that just like you, they have the ability to improve and to grow, then treating them with that respect can help them move forward in their life and create a relationship with you that ultimately adds to your social capital. It adds to your abundance. Again, when Joseph was in prison, he started interpreting dreams, first for the wine steward, then for the baker. And it's important to recognize at this point that he's being truthful with people. He's not telling them what they want to hear. He's telling them what his interpretations are of these other people's dreams. And then ultimately, he's summoned by the Pharaoh to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams. So Joseph is honing his craft. He is starting to integrate, if you will, into Egyptian society, starting to figure out what people need. In terms of being proactive, when the baker and the wine steward are released from prison, he asks them, please remember me when you're released and tell the Pharaoh that I'm here and I'm innocent of the charges. He was proactive. When the wine steward finally remembered that, oh, I forgot to tell the Pharaoh about Joseph in prison. Joseph was summoned to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams, and he did so in a way that earned him respect and a position of power. So each step he took, from being Jacob's favorite, maybe, to advancing in Potiphar's household, to being knocked back down again, but being put in a position of supervisory position in the jail, then being released into the Pharaoh's care, if you will, to help them prepare for the famine. Every step was essential along the way. So Joseph helped people prepare for the famine, saving the people, not only the Egyptians, but saving the Israelites. And ultimately, this is what his role was to make sure that his family, Jacob and his brothers and their families and the Israelites, survived. However, he did it through the Egyptians. The Israelites and the Egyptians weren't, all buddy-buddy and everything. But instead of seeing the differences as barriers, he embraced what was common to all people. He said, we all need to eat. The Pharaoh wants to get richer. Okay, that's on him. However, I know that I can help the Israelite people as well as the Egyptians survive this and help the Pharaoh get richer. So I'm creating a win-win here that will enable me to achieve my goal of saving my family and maybe even ultimately reunification. So it is interesting to notice that the 7 habits of highly effective people, you may not have seen how it had played out before in Scripture. But if you look, these principles are present, ever present, in every generation. So the next time you read the 7 habits, think about Joseph. We actually don't hear much about him after Genesis ends, because he dies at the end of Genesis. And I think that's a shame, because he was one of the first lessons we have about what true love is, what God is, because God is love, prudence, respect, earnestness, endurance, forgiveness, truthfulness, compassion, and selflessness. Sorry, I have to go through the whole mnemonic in my head. So we do start to see a lot of these traits really embodied in Joseph, and we see how by embodying these traits, it helped him succeed. Yes, he ran into difficulties, just like you will run into difficulties. However, every time he got knocked down, he got back up, he dusted himself off, and put one foot in front of the other. Put first things first. He said, okay, I got to get back up, start this over again, and continue to do what I know to be right.